and welcome to the 100th episode of Conspire a Theory. I have with me Ryan Edwards. Ryan, how's it going today?
Doing good, Brett. It's good to be here.
All right. I've met you at a few cryptid events and several things locally here in San Antonio, and as well as, all over Texas and stuff like this. I was really impressed with your work, and you've got like a pretty good body of work so far that I've seen. You've written several books so far, and for someone as young as yourself, just into the scene, that's really impressive. You've done like a fantastic job hitting the ground running as far as as a personality, and you're like you have several presentations all over, and are constantly working at them, and it's just you're quite. It's really tough to pin you down now, and I'm glad to get you for a few minutes. So, how are you doing?
Doing good. October, I think, for everyone in the field of like paranormal and cryptozoology, it's a busy month. I've been busy doing a lot of promotion for the next, we've met at the Symposium of the Strange. I've been doing a lot of promotion for that. Getting prepared for the Texas Bigfoot Conference in Jefferson, Texas this weekend, literally tomorrow. So it's been a busy month and busy couple of days, especially. I'm like, okay, I have to plan for being out for a couple of days. I need to set up my vendor stuff for Jefferson. So I'm lucky. I'm like, okay, cool. I have a free 2 hours. Let's get this down. Because I'm like, a lot of people hit me up for like podcasts and stuff, and I'm like, I'm sorry, anything before 4 o'clock on a weekday I can't do because I'm a full-time teacher. Like anything that's like on like a Wednesday night or like a Tuesday night I can't do because I work at a restaurant. So it's a hectic schedule.
Yeah, you're a busy man, and like I was reporting on your body of work earlier, it's like it's amazing that you're able to get out so much with what time that you do have available. And I like I said, I really commend you for that. I have your first book, the Cryptids of the World book, and I love it. I love to keep it as like a reference guide of cryptids, on my ready when I'm looking at stuff. The one of the things is that I've noticed is that you have like a large body of the in your first book. It's like a lot of who's who of cryptid creatures and stuff from pretty much from around the world. And there are some of these like legendary creatures and stuff, and I really like it. I've noticed that you've had like two other books since then that seem to be more primarily focused on Bigfoot and that neighborhood. Is there any reason that you decided to maybe, I guess, pinpoint or bottleneck your research a bit more?
Well, with me, because I really try to come at it from like I'm a generalist cryptozoologist. I'll study anything that's weird, anything that's paranormal. Well, cryptozoological, not paranormal. That's a whole different thing. But with me, I like to kind of specialize in the more unknown primates like Bigfoot, devil monkey, stuff like that, because I come at cryptozoology from very much a biological standpoint, very much zoological, primatological. I come at it from a scientific standpoint. And those cryptids, at least for me, are the ones that are most viable biologically. Like other cryptids, such as like big popular ones nowadays, like Chupacabra, Dogman, Mothman, all these cryptids are very interesting. But honestly, to me, they're not something biological. So I go after the ones that could be truly just unrecognized species, not seen by science. Things like Sasquatch, stuff like that. And especially for me, one area of research I really specialize in is paleoanthropology, human evolution, where do we come from, paleoanatomy, stuff like that. So when it comes to Sasquatch especially, there's a lot of correlations between paleoanthropology and Sasquatch research and other unrecognized species in around the world. So that's why I really kind of specialize in the more unknown primates aspect of cryptozoology.
So it's more along the lines of what you know and what you can work with, as opposed to just chasing down every single folk tale or neighborhood monster that tends to populate the greater sphere of what are now cryptids, and there does seem to be a sort of bleed over between the cryptids and the folklore stuff, which I'm noticing, and you
Yeah,
sort of like you don't want your peas and carrots to touch, obviously, if I
yeah.
use that analogy.
No, it's like how I say it. If a physicist is going to be out there doing biology, a biologist is going to be out there doing calculus work, because pretty much how science works in general, a specialization is a thing. Being able to like, okay, this is what I studied, this is what I do. I'm not really going to go into other stuff because it's not really my wheelhouse. Like for instance, when it comes to cryptozoology, a lot of people put cryptozoology in the field of like just 14 research, like paranormal, UFOs, stuff like that, which to an extent, yes. But with me, I see cryptozoology as pretty much the first step of zoology. It's a biological field. Yes, these creatures are undiscovered, but because they're undiscovered doesn't make them supernatural. That's one thing, especially with cryptozoology, I try to bring out, especially in modern years, is cryptozoology and cryptids aren't paranormal beings. They're not demons in the woods. They're not some type of topa, things like that. These are truly unrecognized species, not yet recognized by science. I'm not saying that stuff doesn't exist. Like, for instance, even I've had my own paranormal experiences in the past. So I believe it exists, but just because two things that are mysteries doesn't mean they correlate. Like how people bring up how Bigfoot might be supernatural, might be extraterrestrial at points. Like just because two things are unknown doesn't mean they have to correlate to each other. That's like answering a question with another question. And I think there's a reason why we like scientists and not politicians. Science is about answering questions with answers, not just having more questions.
Yeah, I can see that. That's a good position to come at it from. I see oftentimes that I think there's a lot of more woo being accepted in the Bigfoot field. And I believe that's not so much out of open mindedness, but out of frustration for the lack of answers that have come up. And I guess that's just due to the elusiveness of the research that we found so far. But if you were to like answer the question and say, okay, Bigfoot is X, what would your answer be on what you've seen and gathered so far on what Bigfoot is, if you had to pin it down right now, gun to your head?
Gun to my head, if I had to pin down Sasquatch, it is a unknown Drypithecine. It's a non-human primate, not human primate, that most likely evolved here in North America, but came from somewhere else. I have in my second book, Sasquatch and Prehistory. I go into detail in this hypothesis I have. If we look at our own primatological record, we only know 10% of all primates that existed in our world in the first place. And I looked at it, a lot of people bring up Gigantopithecus, of course. The size, of course, this is Bigfoot, stuff like that. Well, I have an issue with that. The
Mhm.
Gigantopithecus was very specialized. It was a non-biped. So I looked at another group of apes called Dryopithecines. Dryopithecus literally means oak ape. These apes lived in Europe during the Miocene, around 20 million years ago. And this is a group of primates. It's a it's a genera, not a genus. It's not one species. There's Rudopithecus, there is Ramapithecus, Dryopithecus, of course, Oreopithecus, and a lot of these Dryopithecines are very interesting because they demonstrate biology and morphological features that are indicative of a biped. For instance, Oreopithecus. This is an ape that was found on parts of like islands in modern day Italy. This creature was bipedal primate 20 million years ago, and it is not related to humans at all. It convergently evolved to become bipedal in its own manner. Dryopithecus itself, its limb measurement, what we call the intermembral index. The human intermembral index is our arms are it's 1 to 1. Our arms are as long as our legs. That's indicative of a biped. A gorilla intermembral index is 1 to 0.5. Their arms are longer than their legs, indicative of a quadruped. Dryopithecus, their intermembral index is 1 to 0.8, right between human and non-human primates, What does everyone describe Bigfoot as? Something that's non-human and human. And a little interesting fact there. We've taken the measurements off of Patty, the Patterson Gimlin film creature. Her index is 1 to 0.8, the same as Dryopithecus. So, what I believe, Dryopithecines were found throughout Asia and Africa, Asia, Africa, and Europe. They were what we like to call a cosmopolitan species. They're almost everywhere. Who says they didn't travel to North America in prehistory? Because when it comes to Sasquatch, it's two things. If it's truly like a biological creature, either it's something that was very Bigfoot-like that entered North America recently, or it's something very non-Bigfoot-like that entered North America and then evolved to become what we now know as Sasquatch. I think it's something that was non Bigfoot like that became like Sasquatch here in North America. Because if we look at the anatomy, the behavior sets, the ecology of Sasquatch, it fits within North America. And it fits within if it had evolved here. So I believe around 20 million years ago during the Pliocene, a form of Dryopithecine moved into North America. And here, due to convergent evolution, it became what we now know as Sasquatch. Because if you look at prehistoric North America, you probably would have said, if you're in, let's just say you're prehistoric Texas during the Pliocene, you probably would have said you're in Africa than in North America. You had proboscideans like elephants, you had ungulates like antelope, stuff like that. You had giant bears, giant American lions. So if a primate had entered North America at that time, due to the competitors of the predators and prey, it would have become very large. And most likely, because Dryopithecines are already on the way to becoming bipedal, it'll probably become bipedal. And that's exactly what we see as Sasquatch. In my opinion, I believe Sasquatch is a relic form of megafauna, like mammoths, saber-toothed cats, American lions. But thanks to its primate intellect and its adaptability, it's been able to survive into the modern day and now be known as the modern day Sasquatch.
Yeah, I've heard of the argument of Giantopithecus that it had like it was more orangutan like, and that's not what people primarily describe in their accounts. And its weight, its torso heaviness, it would have had hunched over forward, which is why it's a quadruped. And I understand that it was like the likely candidate probably because it looked tall, it looked impressive. But if you look at it under a microscope, it's easy to eliminate it as a candidate. And then other candidates like you've mentioned before, like you've just made your case about that. I think that that's very intriguing. One of the things that gets me about the Bigfoot conversation is that I can understand the spookiness being put in primarily when it's like instances where we don't see Bigfoot exhibit what I consider primate behavior or telltale primate behavior that we observe in greater apes, such as some people will mention stuff like bluff charges and stuff like this. But one of my things that I just cannot get over is the Bigfoots, as far as we know, don't throw scat. They don't throw their scat like other great apes do. I mean, chimpanzees do it, gorillas do it, I believe, and I mean, I've never heard an account of a Bigfoot throwing scat at anybody, or if it's not been brought to my attention. I don't know. What is your impression?
Well, with that, we know of great apes, for instance. Yes, they do throw their own fecal matter, but they also do throw other objects like rocks, sticks, stones, stuff like that. And that is seen within Sasquatch. They are known for throwing stones, they're known for throwing rocks, known for throwing sticks, stuff like that. So there is a lot of behavior indicative with Bigfoot that demonstrates primate behavior. For instance, like throwing stones, the vocalizations, how they're very secretive. That's also a behavior set of primates in general. One thing I've actually some people I've never really heard anyone bring up like the idea of them not throwing their own scat before, but that could be maybe in a way that maybe they don't want to do it because it might show that they're in the area. Because these creatures are very secretive, very intelligent. Like I will tell people that go out and hunt for Bigfoot, like these creatures know you're there before you even know they're there. It's like someone's going into your backyard or someone's going into your living room and you're not expecting to see them. Like you're going into where they are. So these animals are highly masters of their environment and are very intelligent. And also, it is known amongst known great apes that they perceive time at a different rate. For instance, chimpanzees. We've done experimentations with young chimpanzees with like memorization. Like we have a certain set of numbers, they have to memorize each one and tap. They do it 10 times faster than a human infant at the same age. Because think about it, if you're a primate out in the trees, brachiating, jumping from tree to tree, you have to perceive time differently than humans. We don't have to do that, so we walk on the ground. So we perceive time differently than other primates. So primates, like for instance, like chimpanzees and gorillas, perceive time faster than humans. If they do that, why couldn't Sasquatch? So maybe even Sasquatch might even have the ability to, like this more supernatural stuff they bring up, like them disappearing, stuff like that. I don't think it's that. It's just that they know the environment so well they can hide. Ask any Green Beret, ask any Navy SEAL. They know how to hide the environment within like a second. So if a human can do it, why couldn't a Sasquatch born and raised in that environment be able to do it?
Yeah, yeah, and to bring it to that point, any child that's ever been lost in a mall, I mean, that showcases elusiveness right there.
Yeah,
It's just the I guess that answers a good question on the disappearance of it. But I guess one of my other hangups as well with the Bigfoot conversation is this attribute of our lack of evidence is a result of their intelligence rather than just dumb luck or natural, forced degradation or predation in their environment. It's like, yeah, we never find skeletons or remains, but then, they're in a hostile environment. That's going to immediately, overgrowth is going to consume it, as are, scavenging predators. They're going to like eliminate the evidence like right away. And I'm okay with that. But on the other hand, there's also the factor of luck where, I mean, I do think that in time, one of them would have been hit by a car or something. And there are accounts of them being hit by vehicles and then quickly recovering and running off. But I think that I mean, one in my opinion would have been, at least hit to the point that it wouldn't be able to run away or something like that. I think we would have seen that in the 60 to 80 plus years of research that we've been keeping our eye out for that. I don't know. I just don't like this whole we don't have any answers, or we officially, quote unquote officially, we don't have any answers due to they're super duper smart. I have a hard time wrestling with that.
yeah. Which honestly I can understand because, like, think about it. We've been at least researching Bigfoot, especially since like the 50s, and we still really don't. We speculate on what we think, but we honestly don't know anything more than what we did back then. We don't have a body. We don't have any type of DNA or anything like that. Well, possibly we might have DNA, but like to bring in the question of like them getting hit by cars, like I always bring up, if one of these things was going to get hit by an 18 wheeler, it should have happened by now.
Mhm.
Especially with how we're venturing into forest more. We're putting highways in the middle of like swampland. You would expect a Bigfoot to get hit by now. So it might be the idea of like maybe the elusiveness, also with the intelligence, but also we we can't just say we don't know what they are because they're just so smart. It that logically doesn't make sense in the first place. So it kind
Yeah,
of
that's
goes into the
just as
question of
much
like,
as
okay,
entering woo. That's just as much as giving them superpowers.
yeah,
Because of spooky enough.
yeah.
Spookiness. Okay, yeah.
Which honestly, with me, I don't think it's really like I don't think these creatures are supernatural or paranormal, but maybe their perception and their intelligence and their like being able to detect things is almost like supernatural. Like it's not really paranormal, but with how adapted they are, how evolved they are, maybe they're able to do stuff like that. Because also to bring in the whole origin theory of Bigfoot, If one of these creatures is a Dryopithecines evolved about 10 million years before the Homo sapiens even started evolving. So this means if this creature is one of those, it technically has several million years ahead of us in evolution. That's one thing I always bring up with people in Sasquatch. I don't believe Sasquatch have human intelligence, but I think they have the level of human intelligence, but they went somewhere else. Homo sapiens, we have mathematics, science, philosophy, religion. Those creatures have the same amount of neurons we do, but they just went somewhere else. Being able to be elusive, evading human detection, being able to be like the kings of their environment.
Yeah,
But also,
environmental adaptation. Yeah.
yes, being able to hide in plain sight. Like, how many stories have we heard of Bigfoots acting like bears until they get up and they walk away? And you're like, okay, that's not a bear. Or them being able to like get down in the grass and then you don't see them. So maybe they highly adapted to things like that. But also to bring in the question of like maybe why haven't we found a body and stuff like that. Of course, we only know 10% of primates in the first place. It's very unlikely to find fossils. But also, we do also bring in the question of like maybe the more conspiracy side of it. Like we've gotten plenty of stories of people like shooting Bigfoots and then people dressed in black suits show up the next day. So we also there's multiple sides you can come at this from. It could be conspiracy theory wise, maybe someone's trying to cover up Bigfoot, and at the same time, maybe these things are just so intelligent. If you shoot them, they're not going to just go down. And also, one thing people a lot of times forget is just how hardy animals are. Like the other day, I was scrolling through Facebook, and there's a photo of a deer shot by an arrow from the last hunting season, and it was seen on like a game cam, and it has an arrow straight through its body, and it's walking around like nothing happened. And everyone's making fun like, oh, zombie deer, but I'm like, no, animals are hardy. Like there's been stories of like wildebeest having to like backs like ripped in half by lions and still being able to walk away from that. Same thing goes with primates. Like there's been stories of like chimpanzees being beaten almost to the point of death by another chimp, but then they able to recover and come back from that. So maybe these animals are also have very hardy bodies and are able to like if they get hit by like a Prius, of course they'll be able to survive. Being hit by like an F-150, then we might have to question if like a Sasquatch will be able to recover from that.
Yeah, I can see that as well. And there are also factors like of how dense our North American forests are. I think it was Theodore Roosevelt or Richard Nixon. One of them implemented some like very overreaching, very um, forest conservation efforts, unlike any other presidential candidate had ever implemented it. And of course, the conspiracy, angle to that is that it was to protect the North American cryptids from, or to, if you're in the dogman camp, to allow us a free and open field to test these super soldier beings that we're able to domesticate somehow. And but that also leads into the case of that the average person has no idea that there's so much land in North America that hasn't been touched or seen by humans ever, and
Yeah,
there's more than enough ample places for a breeding population of, be it Bigfoot or whatever the hell, to thrive in North America, sight unseen for decades, even centuries.
yeah,
And so I'll at least give an inch on that.
yeah. Like for instance, I tell people this. Of course, we always bring up the Pacific Northwest with Bigfoot. Like if anyone's ever flown to like Washington State or anything like that, sea of green from like Northern California all the way to like Alaska. But I'll bring this up here in the South. Last summer, I went to Alabama for the Alabama Bigfoot Conference. I took I-20 east from Fort Worth all the way to northern Alabama. I'm pretty sure I saw two or three big cities on the way there, but mostly it's farmland, it's forest, it's a lot of green. And my good friend Jason McLean, like a researcher, he brings up what he calls the green wall. The green wall is like, okay, when you are on like driving on the highway and you look to the side and you see like the trees. Okay, you have a line of trees, then back there might be a field, and then there's even more forest. That that line of trees almost makes like a wall, and you could have anything walking back there that you'll never even realize. It's like it's hiding in plain sight. Even here in San Antonio, for instance, Hallberger Park is a really well-known park here in town, and it has trails that go for miles, and it has areas that there's deer and that there's coyotes and stuff like that. But people almost never see them unless you're out looking for it. And like a lot of these animals could easily hide in plain sight. And especially it's interesting because a lot of sightings of Bigfoot really close to towns, like being able to like maybe get off human scraps and get into trash and stuff like that. Very similar to how bears act. So the idea that we've discovered everything, that there's no wilderness areas, is totally asinine.
Mm-hmm.
There is plenty of space out there for any large animal to hide. Bigfoot, dogman, flying humanoids, whatever. So, especially if they're able to adapt to the land and adapt to humans, that's the most important part. They have ample room to be able to hide and stay unknown.
I'll say this much: if Bigfoot, what we're looking for, what that we designate as Bigfoot, if it's ever found, I just really, really, really hope, just to pour water on everybody, that it's really, really dumb. That we discover it and it turns out that it's not super smart. It was just a big dummy the entire time. And when people like yourself and Ken Gerhardt and Laura Coleman are sitting there taking their picture with it, it's just got his finger in his nose the entire time, just going duh.
Yeah,
That's my wish that I sort of wish for the Bigfoot, but I kind of feel like that's never going to happen. That it's gonna I
yeah.
mean
Because
it.
even I bring up, like for instance, all the Bigfoot sightings around the country. I'm like, I always say there's probably Bigfoot out there that would never be seen by humans and that would never see humans. Like I think I've heard James Bobo Fay make the joke. All the Bigfoot sightings we have are all the dumb ones. Like a lot of times they're probably like the rash like teenager. Like, know what? I'm gonna go play chicken with an 18 wheeler or something like that and get seen by humans. Or like the Falk Monster incident. Maybe that was like just a really angry, like hillbilly version of Bigfoot, just out there, just like, "Hey, get off my lawn." So a lot of these Bigfoot sightings, I'm like, they probably have as much variety and personality as humans. Like we've even seen with chimps and gorillas, you have ones that are really shy, you have ones that are really intelligent, you have ones that are like the class clown, you have the ones that are the class bully. Maybe you see
Mhm.
this with Bigfoot. Maybe the ones that are like out here, especially in the South, out there rocking trailers and like flipping over ATVs. Maybe those are the bullies of the Bigfoot world. The large, intelligent alpha males, we probably will never see those. Those guys are probably smart enough to stay away from humans, and then it's the dumb teenagers that come out close to town and get seen by someone driving a car or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. It is possible because like a lot of the, I guess, delinquent adolescent behavior of a juvenile, that seems to match up with that sort of pent up aggressiveness seen as
Yeah,
trying to because it's like one thing where because it's very difficult to make an argument that well, maybe not. I because it's just elusiveness and then heavily territorial. Those don't sound like two behaviors that intersect that often. But then given that it's elusive, it's probably because it's trying to protect its territory, and the more experienced ones will take a non-aggressive route of just hiding, and just
yeah,
watching, and then the younger ones, in an effort to, I guess, try to show themselves as viable mates, could take an aggressive stance because it's just that's more human behavior where in the
yeah,
presence of females, juveniles will act out to what they perceive to impress the females.
yeah.
And that's often channeled through aggression.
Yeah, like for instance, like when it comes to like the territorialness, like we've noticed, especially with behavioral sets, the ones here in the South appear to be more territorial than ones in like parts of Alaska, Washington State, Oklahoma, Oregon, things like that. And one thing people brought up is that maybe due to we do have forest here, but it's very sparse forest. We have a lot of open land, especially farmland, stuff like that. Maybe due to the lack of large territories that causes them to be more territorial. More territorial, more, they become more aggressive. Because we've seen that there are behavior sets with Sasquatch. Like there's an old joke with Bigfooters. Like the ones here in Texas are like the rednecks of the Bigfoot world. They're out there angry, killing hogs, stuff like that. While the ones up in the Pacific Northwest are like the hippies of Bigfoot. They're out there calm, not a lot seen often. They're like just walking by if you see them, something like that. But maybe that's something that could be maybe even it's hard to put the name to it, but culture. Like we do know that great apes have a culture to an extent. Maybe it's the same thing with Bigfoot. Maybe they have a way of like raising their young in certain environments, in certain areas. Maybe if you have more predators like bears and mountain lions, maybe they're more aggressive because as adolescents, as younger ones, you had to be more aggressive to fight off a grizzly bear or like a black bear. Maybe that's grown. Maybe they grew up to be more aggressive in certain areas. Maybe areas where there's less humans, they've grown to be more like, okay, let's just stay away from them, and they're more kind of complacent to an extent.
Yeah, yeah,
Maybe that's something that could be across the whole country.
yeah, and in the more dense northern populations, they'd have with large foliage, they would have more access to prey animals because
Yes,
then with the large foliage, then the prey would then explode in number, so they'd have their fill in deer meat. Whereas down here, yeah, they would have to go after hogs because the hogs are it's a problem now where they're actually breeding and becoming a large number and encroaching. So of course, your hog versus Bigfoot, it's going to probably happen just out of necessity because of the numbers are swelling
yes,
and the hogs, of course, they destroy they're very destructive creatures. So I can definitely see that happening down here. As far as the different preferences and tastes, and as far as culture, they either of them are going to have to adapt to their environment and what's readily available, but also have to deal with what's encroaching on their lands, whether we as humans have any say in it or not.
yes. Like think about it. I also bring up one big thing with Sasquatch is oral traditions. Things with Native Americans and stuff like that. Like the indigenous cultures, almost all of them have stories of Bigfoot or some hairy mountain giant out in the woods. And a lot of these stories are more, they are peaceful unless humans encroach on their land. One instance I bring up is the Sierra Nevadas. A lot of the Native American cultures out there would reference how these mountain giants will live out there unless they encroached on their hunting ground. And then these giants would come and raid Indian villages, steal women, things like that, eat children. So it kind of shows you maybe these creatures, especially in prehistory and before Europeans came, were much more at ease with humans, with the Native Americans. Because think, Native American tribes, they were highly mobile. They didn't destroy the land. They didn't build highways. As soon as the Europeans came in, we built farms, created highways, create destroyed forests, create canals. Maybe Sasquatch saw that and they're like, okay, let's avoid that, and they became even more elusive and maybe even more aggressive in areas because they're surrounded by humans. Because that's one thing I always bring up with Sasquatch and a lot of other cryptids. If these things were truly monsters living in the woods, the National Forest Service wouldn't exist. None of us would be out there in the woods right now. Like, I've heard Cliff Barackman make the joke plenty of times of like, if Bigfoot wanted to get you, it would. And that's honestly true. Like, a lot of these stories of them being aggressive, that person didn't go missing. They're not a missing 401 case. So a lot of times, I think these animals we've seen, especially with known primates, they're more likely to scare you than kill you because personally, I think Bigfoot's intelligent enough that it knows if I kill a human, then 20 more humans are going to come out here looking for that person. So if I just scare them off, they won't come back. Yes, this might be some like Scooby Doo logic, but like if I
Mhm.
scare you away, you won't want to come back.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess we sort of like behaviorally, we behave that way towards coyotes. Like, you don't want to kill a coyote because then they all immediately go into heat, and then you've just
Yes,
compounded your problem. So if we can attribute that behavioral aspect with how we deal with a pest, then maybe it is plausible that Sasquatch could take a similar approach, treating us like coyotes that implement that same behavioral problem solving.
yeah. Like even speaking of coyotes, like that's even something interesting that a lot of researchers have noticed is that Bigfoot are very not fans of dogs. Like
Hmm.
a lot of people have noticed if Sasquatch is in the area, usually there's a lot of people that missing dogs. There's been stories of them killing people's dogs, things like that. Maybe it's the same thing. They know if a dog is there to alarm to show you that something's there. Maybe if they are able to eliminate that, then they can hide a little bit more. They can skirt around the areas around your campsite if you don't have a dog because it won't alert you to their presence. Maybe they are smart enough to know that and know to like, okay, let me take care of this thing that's barking and like going to alert humans, and then they won't know I'm here.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess that's just to the degree to how we measure intelligence is like behavioral adaptability to
Yes.
maximize their numbers and stuff, or to protect their numbers. The I think is that what a lot of, as far as the whole, there's a lot of accounts where like a lot of people are implementing the conspiracy that a lot of the park rangers and greater, nature preserves and all that stuff, that they pretty much hide the numbers as, I guess, some sort of sacrifice, some odd sacrificial thing to keep the Sasquatch population complacent,
Yeah.
or maybe whatever monsters that are there, the fairies, if we let so many people disappear, then the fairies won't get upset and encroach, further.
Yeah, I've
And,
heard that
and
theory
yeah,
before.
yeah, that some people are allowed to disappear, and I do wonder if that's, I don't know that I would attribute that all to Sasquatch. I probably have to, if I was put up to it, attribute that to other stuff like monsters and creatures and stuff of that nature. I don't
Yeah.
know what to think,
No, like
but it is
uh
interesting.
with me personally, like for instance, if we were bringing up the missing 411 phenomena,
Yes.
like with people going missing in the woods, I don't think it's all Bigfoot. Of course not.
No.
I
No.
think it could be some Bigfoot. Like hell,
Mhm.
if you come across a Bigfoot and it's having a bad day and it's hungry, maybe it would kill you. It's a wild animal. Like
Yeah.
if like a bear was angry and it would kill you, it's pretty much just like a wild animal. But
Yeah.
I think a lot of it could be towards maybe like the dogman phenomena. We've seen that happen. That's popped up in recent years. Fae
Hmm.
folklore, things like that. Because if you look at a lot of these people, kids especially, that have gone missing. I'm trying to remember his name now, but I think the boy that went missing in North Carolina a couple years back. He
Hmm.
was talking about a bear saved him. That this bear took him and gave him berries and kept him safe. And I'm like, and everyone in the news was like, oh yeah, some angelic bear saved this kid. Some bear that came from God or Jesus came to save this child. And I'm like, this kid's not referencing a bear. He's probably referencing Bigfoot, but he has no vernacular for Bigfoot. Like,
Yeah.
if you don't have a name for it, you're going to call it what's big and scary and furry, a bear. I've had kids call Bigfoot a cow man because they only know cows are big and hairy and furry.
Hmm.
So they see something big and furry, they reference what they know.
Yeah.
And there's even been stories of, I believe one young girl I think went missing in, I believe, Yellowstone, or I believe it was Yellowstone, and she said that Mr. Wolf saved her. Mr. Wolf grabbed her and took her away and put her in this nest area. Then she was found later. So these children aren't referencing actual known wolves or bears. They're referencing these cryptids, Dogman, maybe Bigfoot, stuff like that. But they're just using their vernacular, the words they know, to describe these things that they do not know
Hmm.
actually exist.
Yeah, yeah, I can understand that argument. It's all very intriguing, and I just find it so interesting and stuff of this nature. And I guess that's sort of the pool for people like us. So I guess we'll probably start winding things down a bit. Now I made reference to your first book, which I love it, and I gotta ask is I've noticed that you don't have Kindle versions of your books. Would those be able to be released for Kindle just so that way I could always have it in my pocket? Because I mean, I do love this book. It is fantastic. It's I just love having it just as a reference guide for cryptids and monsters, and having a Kindle version for me would be just fantastic. I don't know if you're going to go in that direction or not, or
Part of
what are
me
you
does
thinking?
want to. I need to talk to because my publishing company changed from my first book to my two other books.
Hmm.
My first book is Gun by Ingram Spark. I do need to try to talk to them about maybe trying to do a Kindle version at some point in the future, or even an audiobook version. I would love to be able to do that at some point. But my
Hmm.
two recent books, they've both been published by Erie Lights, and they are primarily Amazon exclusive, and I need to talk to my publisher about trying to do a Kindle version as well of these two most recent books as well. Because I would love to try to get I'm very much an old fashioned paper book type of guy, but of course how society's going is very much Kindle, electronic books, stuff like that. So I'm like, you know what? I need to not be a fossil. I need to not be like a living dinosaur. I need to not be Mokem Mbembe, and I need to be like, okay, get into the modern age of like electronic books, audio books, and stuff like that.
Well, I mean the Kindle stuff, it really doesn't cost you anything more because it's like it's just plug and play for people like me who just need to have it on screen or on my phone for quick references for stuff whenever we do research.
Yeah.
But as far as and then I do like enjoy curling up with a Kindle instead of sorting through them. That's just getting with people's modern laziness that we have today.
Yeah.
But as far as that, I'm glad that you have that in mind. I do understand working with Ingram Sparks. I've heard like a lot of stories about them and working with stuff, and I hope that you get that sorted out because I've had a few books come via Ingram Spark that I've had to get resended because of they just weren't up to quality and stuff like this. But hopefully your current publisher is going to be able to work with you. Maybe if you could come up with either an expanded or a deluxe edition of your first book that you could bring to them that maybe they could work out. I don't know. I don't know. I'm talking out my ass on this, but it's just and as far as I note on the other two books, you have the cover art by Jason McLean, and I've spoken to him at length before. He's been on this show. He's a really cool guy, and I really love
Yes.
that he's doing the artwork for that. That is fantastic stuff.
Yeah, like he's a good friend of mine, and I'm like, and I came to him when like my second book came out, and I was like, hey, there's no other artist I trust enough than you. Like I trust you more than anyone because I've seen his art a litany of times. I even one of my first books I ever owned was Metroplex Monsters, his book about the Dallas Fort Worth area. And I
Hmm.
fell in love with his type of art, and I was like, "Hey, Jason, you willing to do this?" And he's like, "Yeah, I got you." I'm like, "Perfect," because I'm like, my books, I like to say, are like a little bit mix of everything. Like you have Jason McLean as the artist, you have me as the writer, you have a forward. My second book's written by Ken Gerhard. My third book, the forward's written by Lauren Coleman himself. So it's like,
Hmm.
and I've been published by Erie Lights, which is owned by researcher David Weatherly. So it's kind of like a little mix of multiple researchers all coming together when it comes to these books.
Yeah, I think you're pretty much on the right path, and I mean, I don't have to wish you success because you're very clearly successful. I mean, you've got everything together. All I can do is, as a fan and stuff, is just cheer you on because I think you got a good head on your shoulder and you're doing a really good approach to this. And I definitely, as I've said before, definitely commend you on your efforts.
Appreciate it, Chris. I really do appreciate that. Like sometimes I'm like, I try not to compare myself in this field because like I'm new fairly. I'm
Mhm.
only been really in the field itself in cryptozoology for like 3 years now. I've been doing research ever since I was 10. But I only published my first book in 2021. It's 2024 now. So I'm like, I'm not where Ken Gerhardt is. I'm not where Lyle Blackburn is. But I'm like, no, I've been in this research for only 3 years now, really, and I'm going to conferences. I got 3 books out. I've doing podcasts. So honestly, being praised by people like you, like yourself, is it really hits me because I'm like, at one point I was just a kid that was reading Bigfoot books, and now I'm the person that writes them, and it's like a really surreal feeling at points.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm still in the conspiracy camp that Ken Gerhardt and Lyle Blackburn are the same person. That
Hey,
even if I see,
I've seen them
yeah,
at the same time, both separate people. That's
I
one
I
thing.
I still doubt that. That's some sort of time dialysis thing that's happened. It's some sort of quantum doubling. I swear.
No, it's funny because when I go to conferences with Lyle and Kin, like they're like, "Hey, you're wearing a black hat and you're wearing like a leather jacket. Are you trying to copy our look?" I'm like, "Wait, no, I had this. I had this before I met you guys. I'm sorry." Because they always make the joke of like every cryptozoologist wears a hat, and literally, I'm not helping the situation. And I'm like, oh yeah, like I guess we're all trying to be rock star Indiana Jones over here or something. Like
Yeah.
Jason, at my last Bigfoot conference with Jason McLean, he was like, "Okay, Golf Indiana Jones," and I'm like, is this my nickname now? Oh, okay, thank you guys."
Yeah, I have two pieces from Jason. I have a chupacabra and a illustration of Marvel's Silver Sable that he did for me.
Mm,
They're really cool. The
yes,
the I noticed like your aesthetic. It reminds me of steampunk. That's what I think is like a lot of steampunk stuff. When I look at your stuff at when you have your table set up.
yeah, it's it. I'm very much like a lot of people like to say. It's like, dude, it's like you don't have to worry about promo. You like you have your own aesthetic, and I'm like, I'm very much like I go old fashioned, very Victorian. Like I'm pretty sure I might be the only person I know that carries a pocket watch at full time. Like it's I have my own aesthetic, and it kind of helps out with the research because you're able to kind of promote yourself. You're able to like, hey, no, like look at me, I'm unique. Look at me over here, and honestly helps out.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. So, any parting words before we wrap up? Anything else you want to leave on before we head out?
Well, I guess the only thing is that like, appreciate you having me on, and I will hope to see you at the next Symposium of Strange, November 20th. Anyone that's local in South Texas, if you're interested in anything paranormal, ghost hunting, anything like that, Symposium of Strange, November 20th. We are bringing out Brad and Barry Kling of Ghost Lab. They will be at the Mineshaft Saloon. It starts at 6 p.m. We are selling tickets. If you look up online, you'll see tickets there. We have a $15 ticket for general admission and $30 tickets for VIP. VIP tickets, you get a free signed poster from Brad and Barry and a free signed book or anything that they are selling, signed by them personally. So it's a great event. That's where me and you met, my man. And
Mhm.
it's we're trying to bring in like build this community in South Texas of cryptozoology, ufology, paranormal, and really kind of help promote people and make this community here.
Yeah, yeah, great stuff. And let everybody know just once again where to find all your books.
Of course, my books, my two most recent ones, Sasquatch Prehistory and Beyond Bigfoot, they have both been published by Erie Lights Publishing, owned by David Wetterly. They're also available on Amazon. Cryptids of the World, my first book, is available wherever books are sold. Barnes & Noble, Half Price Books, Amazon.com. If you look up Brian Edwards Cryptozoology, you'll find my books. You'll also find my social medias. I also have my Facebook and my Instagram account. You can go on there. You can message me directly if you have any questions about the books or anything in my research. I'm always open, and I'm always open to talk to people.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Gotcha, Chris. It was a pleasure to being on.